G'day. Today on Tyre Review, in the warehouse, we're going to look at the Toyo Off-Road family. So there's 4 tyres in this family, and we're looking at the off-road because it's what I'm interested in, but it's also what we've collected back here. So let's grab the first one. It's the Toyo AT2, which is this one here. It's been in the family for a little while now. It's an all-terrain tyre, and it's been slowly replaced by the AT3, which is this one here. And then their bigger, more aggressive brother is the Toyo RT, which is this one. I think I know the feeling having bigger, more aggressive brothers actually. So, and then we've got the biggest brother, if we're rolling with that analogy. It's the MT, which is this one here. Man, it's definitely, they get heavier as they go across the range. So this is the current Toyo off-road range in Australia. There is actually more. So there is the, which one is it? This one here. There is actually the Toyo M55, which is this tyre here, so I'm probably out of focus. But I won't focus too much on this one because it's actually, I think it's more of their mining focused tyre. So it's not necessarily a consumer focused one, so post that one over there. So this is your core range. The AT3, as we speak, has just been launched and is going to slowly replace the AT2 over the next 12 to 18 months. We did a very specific studio overview video on the AT3, and we've just done a comparison video between the two, so I won't talk about the two too much in terms of comparisons to each other. But what I wanted to look at is the range. So when you're looking for tyres for your car, it comes down to what you're actually going to be using them for, balanced off with what you can afford, balanced off with the looks that you want for the vehicle, plus a variety of other things like, wet weather handling, dry handling. Even rotational weight is a big thing because that's going to affect your fuel economy, plus the tread pattern and that sort of stuff. So what I thought would be interesting is to actually look at them in terms of both their aggressiveness and also some other factors as well. So obviously the least aggressive is now the AT2. There are other tyres that sit below this in terms of them being more highway oriented, but this is where I wanted to start because, all-terrain tyres are what I'm interested in, and anything from all-terrain onwards is spot on. So this is the AT2. It's currently rated on Tyre Review at 4.1, which is pretty good, 4.1 out of 5. The AT3 hasn't actually had a rating yet because it's so new on the market. The RT is 4.5 out of 5. This is actually one of the top performing all-terrain or aggressive all-terrain tyres on Tyre Review. And then the MT itself is the big burly brother. That's 4.1 as well, which makes it really highly rated. So maybe I'll jump back again and talk about that aggressiveness. I've mentioned it a fair bit, and the guys have talked about doing an aggressive counter on the videos because I do mention it a fair bit, but it's something to think about. So these ones here are all-terrains. They're designed to spend most of their time on the blacktop, but be ready and capable when you go off the blacktop. And something I was noticing before, this one has these 4 channels going around the tyre and narrower gaps between the main tread blocks and even this strong central rib, which means that it's going to be, should be, pretty good on the road and good for cornering and also good for water evacuation as well. Stepping into the AT3, you've got some bigger grooves between the blocks, these big lateral grooves that you're seeing, as well as 2 big circumferential grooves as well. So the whole tread pattern is more spaced out than the AT2. But these are actually both aimed at the same sort of market. So what's good for this one is probably good for this one. But it'll be really interesting to see how that rolls as more people see the tyre and more people use the tyre. So then we step up a notch to the RT. So this is their rugged terrain, but it's really an aggressive all-terrain, like really super aggressive all-terrain, that actually is inspired by the mud terrain. So theoretically, you can almost say it's like a mud tyre carcass, although, you know, obviously there's load ratings and that sort of stuff. There's still some flexibility, differences in load ratings is what I was getting at. So they're not exactly the same carcass, but they're stronger carcass. So the body of the tyre is more informed by the MT rather than the AT. And also the tread blocks are really quite separated apart. You've got this nice consistent set of tread blocks running through the middle though, which means it should be quieter on the road than your full-blown mud tyre, which has big tread depth, big gaps between the blocks, and big aggressive blocks here in the middle as well. But talking about tread depth, I actually have that written down here. So let's go back to the AT2. So tread depth, these range between 9.9 and 13.5 mil of tread depth, and mostly around about 12. The AT3 is again between 9.5 and 13.5. Well, that was 9.9, this is 9.5. 9.5 to 13.5. Most of those are between 11 and 12 mil. It was all in American language, so I had to sort of try and interpret rather than, you know, looking at them all as a whole. So we'll see what happens as more sizes are released here in Australia. And then the RT, so it has a tread depth between 13 and 15 mil. So where these two sort of top out at around about 12.5, this one starts at 13 mil and goes right through to 15 mil of tread depth. So that's, you know, I sort of lose a finger in there, whereas here, I mean, actually, let's go a fingernail scale. Fingernail depth, whereas it's more than a little fingernail depth. And the MTs start at 13.5, so 0.5 mil more, and go up to 16.8 on some sizes. So if your tread depth is your thing, then obviously the MTs are the way to go, but the tread compound changes across the tyres as well. And traditionally, MTs are more likely to tear themselves apart as you get past X number of kilometres. And so I haven't actually looked too deeply into how people go with these, but something to keep in mind. So it's not all about tread depth in terms of longevity. So let's talk about the strength and durability of them. So these tyres, the all-terrains, have 2-ply sidewalls. So that means that they've got 2 sets of cords on the side, on each side, which makes them a little bit more comfortable. See, I can do the noodly thing. Same with these as well. Whereas these both have 3-ply sidewalls. And actually, I can feel quite a strength difference between these two as well. So these are 3-ply sidewall. One of the other things you'll notice is the sidewall protection increases as you go across the range as well. So the AT2 has some sort of protection here, maybe a couple of mil of depth of rubber plus some complexity. But the actual upper, like the tread blocks, don't have this alternated scalloping that the AT3 has. So this has the alternated scalloping on the shoulders, but less protection here on the upper sidewalls. So maybe even, it's probably not even half a mil worth of extra rubber, and so it's relatively light on in comparison. Then you step up into the RT, which has the alternated scalloping tread blocks on the shoulder, but it also has some pretty serious protection and maybe some extra traction and grabbing side biters here, but they also look pretty good on the car as well. So that's certainly stepping up a notch. And then the MT has got some pretty crazy, in comparison to the AT3, some pretty crazy side biter action going on, and also that alternating scalloping action too in the shoulder. So again, it's going to step up a notch as you go through the grades. And then we talk about face plies. So that's how many different layers of steel and fabric and other stuff there are between the inside of the tyre and the outside of the tyre. So the AT2 has between 6 and 10 face plies, depending on the size, which is actually the same for This one, I believe, I haven't been able to get definite information, but I think this one should be between 6 and 10 as well. The RT, they're all 10 face plies. So they're all going to have 10 layers of stuff between the outside of the tyre where you want things to stay and the inside of the tyre where you don't want things apart from air. And then on the mud terrain, it's between 6 and 10 again, primarily 10. I have noticed in the mud tyre sizes that they actually tend to change the number of faces. I think that's because it makes some of them more conformable. But if you know, then stick a comment in the, an answer in the comments. I'll be curious to see what your analysis is. Let's see, what else can I talk about? Weight. Weight is a really interesting thing as well, because the heavier a tyre is, the more power your vehicle has to use to actually keep it rolling. And so lighter tyres means they're more fuel efficient. Heavier tyres probably means that they're built more tough. So the AT2, and what we will use is we'll use a common size, so 265, 65, 17 in the LT designation. The AT2 is 20.5 kilos. The AT3 in the same size is 22.2 kilos. So there's a slight increase in weight going to the AT3, which is interesting. Maybe there's some more fancy things in this tyre. Different manufacturing, obviously. So we're going from 22.2. They don't actually make a 265, 65, 17 in the RT. So what I had to do is use the 265, 70, 17. So a slightly bigger tyre. And that came in at 25.6. So you can sort of assume that a 265, 65 would be a little bit less than that. Maybe, I don't know, 24 and a half, 25, thereabouts. So still a couple of kilos more than the AT3. And then we step up to the MT, and that's 26.3 kilos. So a full 4 kilo difference between the AT3 and the MTs. And that's probably, I don't know, random off the top of my head. It's a certain percentage. I'm not going to name it now because that's going to be embarrassing because I'll get it wrong. But it's quite a percentage of weight difference between these two. Is that 20%? Surely not. Can't be. Anyway, it's probably between 15 and 20%. I'm sure our videographer will work it out, and she's probably flashing it up here somewhere because I'm no good with maths. Anyway, what else can I talk about? So 3-peak mountain snowflake. So that means that the tyre maintains conformability under a certain, I think it's under freezing, less than freezing. And it also means that it has meets certain traction standards, so on snow and ice and that sort of thing. And the only one of these tyres that is actually 3-peak mountain snowflake is the newest one. It's the AT3. So if you're living in areas where you get snow and ice more occasionally than enough time that you actually have to have winter tyres, then these might be a reasonable choice for your vehicle. So yeah, that's the only 3-peak mountain snowflake rated tyre. What else can we talk about? Oh, sizes. So the smallest size available here is a 215/70 R15, and that goes all the way up to a 285/50 R20. So there's a good range of sizes in there, but it doesn't go too small. Well, actually, 15 is pretty small, but it doesn't also go massive. If you want to go massive, the RT is probably actually your option, but we don't have a full complement of sizes for the AT3 yet in Australia, but they are actually saying that they're going to have more sizes than the AT3 than the AT2. And then we'll have those over the next 12 to 18 months. But the RT actually goes between 265/75 R16 and 37, 13 and a half R22. That's massive. So if you've got a Gladiator or something like that and you want to go 37s, then that's the way to go. These ones actually only go up to 35 by 12 and a half, 17. So again, if you want to go massive, the RT is actually a choice. The smallest size is a 225/75 R16. So that's even still a reasonable size tyre. So that's the Toyo range of off-road tyres. Again, what you choose comes down to that balance of factors. There's no one tyre that's going to fit all vehicles. If you go aggressive, if you go hardcore, if you go really rock crawling and mudding and that sort of stuff, then this end of the spectrum is good. I myself say you don't necessarily need an MT these days. I know they look great in the car park for your mole crawler, but an RT is actually the way to go. The only problem is that RTs are, the Toyo RT is a little bit harder to come by at the moment, or has been up until recently, but I was speaking to the Toyo guy about half an hour ago, and he says they have more stock of these now, and they're hoping to have more stock over the next however long. So the scarcity of these excellent tyres is hopefully going to be less than it has been. So hopefully we'll see more of them out in the street. And I think for me, the winner, my favourite tyre out of these is probably the RT, because that suits my style of driving the best. I don't need a full-blown MT. I don't want to have the noise that will happen as they get up in their Ks. Unless you rotate them every 5,000 Ks or 10,000 Ks, then they will get noisy. The RT2 you would have to look after as well. You'd need to rotate them and align fairly regularly, but probably not as much as the MT. And then even still, the AT tyres, you need to rotate and align fairly regularly to get the most value out of your tyres. Because if you don't rotate them, then they will sort of get into their comfortable spot and they end up looking a bit weird and getting sawtooths and that sort of stuff and getting noisier. Whereas if you actually rotate them, you're less likely to have that happen. And aligning your car, making sure that the wheels are pointing in the right direction, is going to help with that lifespan and actually maximizes the life of your investment as well. So that is the Toyo Off-Road range in Australia. If I missed anything, make sure you stick your comments into the comments section. If you're up for banter, stick a comment down there as well. Always up for a chat. Yeah, so that's it. Toyo Off-Road range. Thanks for tuning in.